Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
Hello once again to all of you out there across the fruited plain. This is Scott McKay, which is at Scott McKay on Twitter, Real Scott McKay on Instagram, Scott McKay on YouTube. The website is www.mountaintoppodcast.com, and you can find us on Facebook. Join the Facebook group at Mountaintop Summit. With me today is a friend of mine. We go way back. And you know what? Most of the time, when I talk to my guest, Cyndi Olin, it's talking to women. She runs really amazing, well-populated summits for women, and she always seems to like to get my view on how men think about women, and we always have a lot of fun when we talk. So finally, it dawned on me, thick-headed as I am sometimes, that I should have Cyndi on my show. But see, Cyndi doesn't usually talk to men, but just like I don't usually talk to women. I mean, Emily and I do on occasion. We coach lots of women, actually. But not on this show, and not what I'm most well known for certainly is coaching women. It's coaching men. But just like Cyndi likes to have me on her show to talk about men to women, I was like, hey, you know what? I should have Cyndi on this show and talk to you guys about what women are like. So we wrestled back and forth, figuratively, not literally, because I'd win, but we figuratively wrestled back and forth on the phone about what topic to run today for you guys. And someone finally uttered why she's holding back, and it was the obvious choice. So without any further ado, my good friend from California, Cyndi Olin, to talk about why she's holding back. Welcome, Cyndi.
Thank you so much for having me, Scott. I'm super excited to be here with you.
Yeah, a little bit of a change of pace, huh?
It really is. I'm talking to men about women, which is super fun.
Well, it's one of our favorite subjects, and we love when we have women on board because you all generally have lots of energy and you're a lot of fun to talk to. More than some sweaty guy.
True, right? Who wants to talk to a sweaty guy all the time? Women smell so much better, and we don't sweat. We glow.
I wonder if guys can relate to what I'm about to say. Sometimes a woman will pass by and I just know she's going to smell good. And I time my inhale so I can get some of that aura when she comes by. And every time I do that, I think, man, am I being creepy? Nah, because A, nobody knows. At least till now, everybody knows now. But B, she smells good for a reason. I'm supposed to enjoy that,
Right. Yeah, we don't do that for ourselves. We do it for other people.
If you can smell yourself, you're in trouble. Either way.
That's true. It's so true.
Right.
Yes. Whether it's,
You're too polite and ladylike to say it. But if you can smell your own stank, you're in trouble.
Yes. I was trying to figure out a really nice way of saying it.
There isn't one. Yeah.
I'm not neutral nice girl. At least I try to be.
And similarly, if you can smell how wonderful your perfume smells, you probably doused on too much of it.
Totally.
I mean, this goes without saying, so say no more.
It's a California thing.
Yes, right. Why she may be holding back. First one to throw on the pile is because you don't smell right. Could be. Although she probably wouldn't have given out much to begin with, let alone holding it back now.
Right. Let's assume you're dating and you don't know what she's thinking. She's, there's long silences sometimes. She holds back. You get mixed signals from her.
What's the difference between mixed signals and holding back?
Same thing, really.
Same thing, really.
Same thing. Why does she do it? I mean, I'll tell you the number one reason. She's not sure if she's into you.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little. First of all, you're already dating. She's not sure she's into you. So this can't be going well from the start.
Right. It could be early dating. So she hasn't quite figured out, is this the right guy for me? Which, he should be doing the same thing.
Fair enough.
So she might be holding back for that reason. And a lot of times women will do that because they're trying to assess how he's going to show up, right? Is he going to call when he says he's going to call? Is he going to, show up on time for the date? That's important to women, or at least communication within that place. So it's a way of testing as well. So that's a really big thing. And, there's a little bit of, she's holding back. She's probably been hurt in the past, but who hasn't? And she wants to see, is this guy going to show up as the kind of man that I'm seeking? A man of character, a man that does what he says he's going to do, or is he going to show up like the jerk that I dated, who was hot and cold?
Okay, so a couple minutes ago, you said something about mixed signals and holding back being the same thing. So if a woman is holding back because she's wondering how he's going to show up, how is a man supposed to know how to show up if she's sending mixed signals? Does this woman want me to pick her up? Does she want to not see me at all because she said, oh, you know what? I can't make it Friday night after all. It's going to have to be next Wednesday instead. That's putting undue pressure on a guy to try to figure out what these signals actually mean, isn't it?
Totally.
Or should he just assume maybe she's not interested in me yet and I'm going to have to work harder to get this to happen? And that leads to the inevitable question, should he work harder to try to get her to like him more? Or is that just what I call pushing it uphill?
You know what? It's a good question. Yes, if she seems to be worth it. So, it's kind of the same for women too. How do you feel when you're around her? For the most part, like the 60-40 rule or 80-20 rule, do you feel pretty good when you're around her? But yet at the end of the day, you go in for the kiss and maybe she gives you the cheek, or she's, you're just not quite sure what she's thinking. So, yeah, I feel like if she's somebody that seems to be the kind of woman that you would like to get to know, then go to that next step and even ask her the question.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Where would you like this to go? What are you thinking?
Yeah. Oh gosh. A woman who really wants a relationship, who's interested in that, that's music to her ears, because she wants to know, gosh, he's actually asking me the question, what do you think? Where would you like this to go? Here's the other problem. If she's really insecure, she might be afraid to answer that question honestly. Then you're pushing something uphill.
Well, there's also the lack of leadership there. If you start asking women what they want to do on dates and about the relationship, she's going to think, well, this guy, he doesn't know what he wants. He's just trying to somehow impress me or make sure he does what I want. And that's somehow kind of needy or weak and not very masculine at all. So there's got to be some balance there. Mm-hmm. To me, this all sounds sort of symptomatic of what's wrong with dating and relating in general these days, which is people are meeting on apps. They're meeting without really knowing each other, and they're being very superficial, and they're almost afraid to connect nowadays. But what we all crave deep down is that connection, right, Cyndi?
Absolutely. So it's exactly what you said. It's like that inauthenticity, because, a lot of times women, when we go on dates, especially a first date or second date, we're trying to impress you guys, but we're taught to hold everything in, literally, wear the Spanx, look perfect and hold back, and there's so much dating and relationship advice. And if she follows the rules or something like that, which is horrible, she's taught to really hold back and be super mysterious and actually not as receptive. So it's confusing. And then men, there's the Me Too movement. There's all kinds of things. Men are afraid to do too much too soon with a woman.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, to clarify, by the rules, you're talking about the rules in capital letters, the book of that name, which basically infamously taught women how to be aloof and not give men much to go on so that they would get the power position by being more intriguing and making men beg for more information or to get to know them more.
Exactly.
Yeah. Kind of an outdated way of looking at it, if it ever worked at all. Because nowadays, it is so pandemic, Cyndi, that people don't connect at all, that anything that's standing in the way of that connection is standing in the way of your real, true relationship that's waiting for you out there.
Yeah.
And when men go out with a woman who is holding back in terms of even giving him any signals at all, lest she not be ladylike or she's trying to follow the rules, and be this aloof, intriguing woman, or even that she's been taught by her mom that only sluts throw themselves at men, so you want to do the exact opposite. I guess that falls under ladylike, but you get my drift. Men don't know what to do with that. We're human. We need something to go on. We don't know how to relate to you if you don't give us anything to relate to. And it all starts with the apps, of course, because there's a picture and at best a vapid line they downloaded from the internet about who they are. And so even when people who have won the genetic lottery because they're gorgeous and photogenic or whatever meet, then they still don't like each other because they had nothing to go on to begin with and they're not connecting. So she may be holding back because she doesn't sense that connection. And a lot of women are waiting for the guy to initiate that connection, which means somewhere along the way, someone's going to have to go ahead, roll the dice and be a little bit more vulnerable and say, hey, look, this is who the hell I am. Do we match up or not? They got to risk the loss. And unfortunately, Cyndi, men and women are together in the same boat where we generally fear loss, especially if we have high expectations for the relationship that appears to be nascent before our very eyes.
True. And I mean, let's just say you met on an app, you're doing a first meeting. I hope to God you're not having any expectations that this could turn into something on the first meeting,
Well, the first expectation there is God cares about your first meeting.
God does care about your first meeting. True. And, God, that cracks me up. Just having, really going into it like, gosh, I'm going to meet a new person. This could be fun. And, if things move forward, awesome. If we have a good connection, as you shared. And something that does create holding back in women is a lot of times when a woman goes on a first date, a guy will talk a lot if he's nervous. And then she will hold back. She'll start to think that he's bragging because a lot of times men might talk about their accomplishments because they want to impress her, right? So that's a thing that might create disconnection in a woman. We talked about this, curiosity creates connection really between both sexes. Who doesn't, everybody likes to talk about themselves.
And you know what? It seems like the more accomplishments a man perceives himself to have, the worse a problem he has with this. And then he's wondering why, hey, I got this Yale degree and I have a boat and I've flipped 4 businesses and I'm worth $100 million and, I'm this, I'm that. I've got all these things going for me. And they wonder why the women just aren't interested anymore. That's because by the time they're done the first date, they've dated, gotten married, had children, retired, grown old, and died together before they've even basically met each other. There's nothing left to talk about. She's just like, well, okay. This is like the first 10 minutes of the movie Up. You know what I mean? Where their entire life happens before he's finally old and, widowed, and that's the rest of the movie from there. It's exhausting. It's mentally exhausting for anybody to be on a date where the other person just unloads everything. And not only is it killing the intrigue, it also makes them seem like they're all about themselves. It's not about the person on the other side of the table at all. I mean, do you even care about me? Why did I show up? Why didn't you just do a monologue and record yourself and listen to it? You know what I mean?
Exactly. I was just thinking it's like a monologue. And I coached the hundreds and thousands of women that'll get so frustrated about this. Now there's something I do tell them. If a man starts doing that, to affirm, oh gosh, I heard you. That's great. What an amazing accomplishment. What about this? And see if he can be redirected. But you don't want to be that guy. You want to be the guy that shows up and yes, you're going to share about yourself and you're going to ask her questions because you want to create a connection. And women also will hold back because of their history. I was a really shy child, and part of it was because I was to be seen and not heard. Okay. I grew out of that. But, if you grew up in a house where there wasn't a lot of affection, there wasn't a lot of I love yous, a woman can have this holding back quality. I actually call it the ice queen quality, which she's not really an ice queen. She's more like, an M&M with a hard coat shell and, she's soft on the inside.
Hopefully she's a green M&M.
Why are they the best?
Never mind. I'll let you Google that later.
Oh, I didn't know about that. Of course. But anyway, I mean, those are some reasons why she might be holding back. And so if a man starts to become curious about her, curious about her background, then she usually starts to open up and feels safe. And it's a safety thing for a woman like that has some insecurities in the sense of, really allowing herself to open up because she just wasn't taught to do that.
Well, what's interesting is guys go by looks. Surprise, surprise, a lot.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they're looking at this woman across the table who they're sexually attracted to already. By the way, in the M&M commercials, the girl M&M is always the green one.
Oh.
The old wives' tale, albeit a fun old wives' tale that especially gets propagated in junior high and high school, is that green M&Ms are aphrodisiacs. That's where the green M&M reference comes from. Anyway.
I always thought that was oysters. But anyway, continue.
Well, oysters are a little slimier and not necessarily as generally appealing as M&Ms are. So, probably more utility with the green M&Ms.
Good point.
I personally love oysters. Then again, I'm from the East Coast, so. Anyway.
I love it.
How did we get on this tangent?
I don't know, but I love oysters as well. I'm from the West Coast. Anyway, we'll talk about other things.
Well, we're connecting, see?
We are.
All right, so speaking of connecting, a man sitting across the table from this woman who he's already perceiving to be sexually attractive, and the halo effect kicks in, right? She's got to be absolutely socially astute in every way, because after all, every bit of men's dating advice from about 2005 to 2012 said so. Women are incredibly talented socially. We as men are total schlubs with anything social. She's already mentally running circles around us socially in her mind and silently judging us. So, we're screwed in the figurative sense, not the literal sense from the beginning in our minds. So here you have this woman on the other side of the table. She's gorgeous. We want to like her. We want her to like us. There can't possibly be anything under there that's broken in our minds. She can't have had this tough childhood. She can't have any insecurities. She can't have any mechanism in her mind that's causing her to hold back from us for fear or insecurity or anything like that. Obviously, Cyndi, men are thinking this has got to be our fault. So what happens is the dominoes start falling. Everything starts becoming a chain reaction. She's holding back. We hold back. Next thing you know, your women are coming to you going, how come I never connect with anybody on a date, Cyndi? Can you coach me? Right?
Exactly. It's so true. And, once a woman, actually does open up and, lets go of, and a lot of times certain cultures can breed in insecurity in women too, which sucks.
Or also this tacit behavior on dates. Some Southeast Asian cultures in particular, the woman should show no emotion when with a man because that would just be inappropriate. Yeah. What you're saying is true.
Yeah. I had a man that I coached that was involved with a woman from Asia, and he had such a hard time because he couldn't figure out if she really wanted the relationship or not, because she had that exact behavior, and she wasn't that receptive when it came to their connection, and they were long distance. So imagine that. It's really hard to keep a connection. And, I was thinking about this. I did an article around why supermodels stay single because I had watched a talk show a number of years ago, and the host was interviewing a supermodel, and he was asking her about, I don't know what it was, but he's like, gosh, you must have, a really great boyfriend or several. And she goes, no, I really don't get asked out very often. And the talk show host almost fell off of his chair. He's like, what? You're gorgeous. You're what every man would want. And she said, yeah, I don't get asked out very much. And then he joked back. He goes, well, you're about to leave this studio. You're going to get asked out all the time. But the bottom line is that she's like, yeah, I'm a little shy and, I feel a little awkward. And so she doesn't even necessarily look at guys or hold a gaze at them. And the other reason, because I interviewed a few women that were former supermodels, is that they didn't want attention from men they didn't think they would be interested in. So they were afraid to open up at all.
Well, the other things I would suspect are, first of all, men are just too intimidated. They're thinking, well, you know, a supermodel, that's for some other guy, not me. I mean, you would have to have an amazingly ironclad self-esteem to think you had a chance with a supermodel. Now, of course, you'll never know unless you talk to her and see if you connect, right? So every guy should have that self-esteem, in my opinion. But, you know, I'm being realistic here. Most guys, the vast majority of guys would not. Second of all, a woman like that who's in the physical looks business, okay?
Yes.
It doesn't surprise me at all that those women would be shy and not necessarily be outgoing, because they've placed themselves into a position where their livelihood is based on their appearance. Their skill set isn't necessarily tied to how they carry themselves or how they are socially or whether they can dig a ditch or lay bricks or, you know, manufacture things. That's the business they're in. Meanwhile, it's extremely unsettling to women, I happen to know, when a man really pre-approves her on her looks and really values her solely because of that. So, okay, on one hand, she's put herself in the position of being valued for her looks, but when it comes to a romantic relationship, she wants that guy who's going to take the leap and go deeper and say, hey, can I connect with this woman? Is she my personality type? Do we agree on finances and faith and how to raise children and what to have for dinner and where to go on vacation? A man's going to have to come break down that barrier of looks and be willing to go deeper and see if she can reciprocate. And that's going to come as almost a shock to a supermodel woman system because it's so damn rare. I mean, to a normal red-blooded guy, hey, this woman's living off her looks. Let's appreciate her for her looks. That's what she wants, isn't it? But that's not how relationships get stoked, and that's not how relationships thrive.
True. It's very true. And I like the point that you made about the supermodel and her looks, because that's exactly what a man might think. And I work with women all the time that are fearful that men only want her for her looks or for sex. That's a big one too. She'll hold back because she's not ready to have sex.
Supermodel or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you could be sitting across the table from her. You're super attracted. She feels that. And her instant thought in her mind is, he wants to have sex with me and he doesn't even know me. I want to grow something that's more in depth, obviously.
Right. It's like if a guy has lots of money and the woman's sitting across from him and all she's talking about is his money and all she's focused on is how much money he makes. And I mean, women will say, like, how much do you have in the bank? How much are you worth? What's your net worth? What did you W-2 last year? All these crazy financial based questions.
Why the hell do they say that, especially on the first date?
Well, why the hell would a guy telegraph that all he's interested in is sex on the first date? But you know as well as I do, we do this as humans. We focus on what we want, and we forget that there's a red-blooded human being over there who has deeper needs and is looking for a deeper connection, right?
Exactly. And, you know, to that point, when women feel that, or even if that's not his intention and he might be giving her a lot of attention or a lot of compliments, and she starts to feel pressure or like he's coming across as too much too soon, which could be construed as needy as well.
Yeah, that'll make her pull back. She's not going to push forward, which is the opposite of pulling back.
Right.
Think about it. Push forward is the diametric opposite of pulling back.
Right. But do men really want women to push forward?
Well, I mean, they don't want them to pull back either, so that presents a pretty nice quandary, doesn't it? What do we really want from women? We don't want them to throw themselves at us, but we don't want them to pull back either. I guess what we're all looking for, men and women alike, even regardless of your sexual orientation, frankly, someone who I don't feel like I have to pull or push, or who isn't pulling or pushing me. We're just getting along. We're understanding each other. We're dancing this dance together. Because if you think about it, a dance isn't a pull or a push. It's something you do together in synchronicity.
Right.
That's the kind of the way to think about it, if you ask me.
I agree. It's that ebb and flow as well. Give and take, receptivity, both of you putting the effort forward. So the other one, feels good about the relationship as well. If one person's holding back, then it creates a lot of confusion, or stories get created in that person's mind. Well, maybe she's just not that interested. I'll stop calling her. When in effect, she was really interested. And then she was taught by an article she read that she shouldn't call the guy back.
Right.
So it's a tough dance at times when, a woman is fearful, especially in the beginning, because maybe she has been pursued a lot by her looks. Maybe she's not a supermodel. Or when she's gone too fast, she's, wound up sleeping with a guy too soon, and then he pulls back and leaves, which doesn't feel good either. So, a lot of this too, we can get into attachment styles, things like that. A woman could be kind of anxious and really wanting to show up perfectly, which means that she's not really being authentic to herself. So the key is, I think, for a guy, the more comfortable he is with himself and the more comfortable he shows up on the date, it creates space for her to drop in to her own security as well. Because she's looking for a man to lead, especially on that, I'm thinking first meeting, first date.
Well, you talked about people asking questions. Mm-hmm. And by that, I'm assuming you didn't mean an interrogation.
No.
We're just getting to know each other here. The questions, instead of being so clinical and cold and binary, they have to be a little bit more warm and fun. Like, where would you like to go on vacation? What was the greatest day you've had recently? Something that's fun, something that's interesting to talk about. And I think a lot of this ultimately goes back to what we touched upon briefly before, which is being authentic. And men leading have to own their truth. They have to throw that truth on the table and see if they get along with this woman or not. Not in a rude way, not in a brusque way, not in a way that forsakes this sacred dance we're talking about. But, if you're wondering about something, say so. Be the one who's willing to broach the subject. If a woman appears to you like she should be sweet and wonderful and you're curious to get to know her, but she's holding back and she's being shy, but she's still smiling with you and she's on the second or third date or gives you some other obvious signal that clearly she likes you or she wouldn't be here, on the second or third date especially. Why not just throw on the table a question like, I'm wondering if you're the kind of person who's shy at first and takes a while to get to know. Because if you are, that's okay. I would love if you told me that was the case, because then I would have a much greater understanding of how we're relating right now, and I would know to be patient and help you out as much as I can. And the woman would have to love hearing a question worded with that kind of explanation behind it. And who knows, that may actually end up expediting the process because she can take a deep breath and feel more comfortable,
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love what you shared about, asking questions, but it not being in an interrogation. And I think a lot of people get in their heads about, what kind of questions to ask or, how to open that person up. And yeah, that's perfect. If for whatever reason I was on a date and I was holding back and a guy said that to me, it would be like the seas departed. Beautiful. Music to my ears.
And even if you're dead wrong in your assessment, maybe she'll help you with the right assessment. Oh, it's not like that at all. I hope I'm not putting off that vibe. My goodness. And then she'll maybe give you a little more clarity.
Right. Could be.
Yeah. So, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about some of the ways women start holding back in the context of an established relationship, because that goes on too. As a matter of fact, I happen to know that in women's dating advice, one of the most powerful themes is why he's holding back. Here's a guy here's a guy I wanted to fall in love with, and now he's pulling away. Pullingaway.com. Every other bit of women's dating advice you see is on that subject. But women will pull back from us also.
Yes. Yeah, I did a whole series on why men pull away, but let's go back to why women do it.
And wisely so you did.
Why women do it is, a lot of times we do it because we start building up resentments or grievances. And this is something that's classic with women. And I try to coach them out of it all the time, but it's almost in our DNA if we see something, he does something, he comes over to the house and I don't know, he leaves his socks on the floor and he's just always doing that. And she'd asked him nicely. And then it's just, things start piling up and piling up. She doesn't say anything. So all of a sudden she starts to pull away and withhold sex, or she starts to question whether the relationship's the right relationship because she's creating stories in her head and these things have started happening and she doesn't want to appear needy or like a nag, but there's all of these things that are building up. So she'll pull back because that's a big one, because of that reason entirely.
The old cumulative effect of all the things he's ever done to piss her off.
Totally.
Yeah. And of course, men won't know what's going on because she won't say anything. So here's that lack of communication, that lack of connection rearing its ugly head again. Like we've talked about on this show several times, people will call me up and say, okay, my girlfriend or my wife said this last night. What did she mean, Scott? And what would you tell them? Same thing I do.
Why don't you ask her?
Why don't you ask her? She'd know better than me. And then they'll be like, oh, well, I can't do that. Well, that's because there's no connection, right? That's what's going on there. People are starved for connection nowadays. When they're not getting it, they're going to pull back because what else can you do when there's no connection but pull back? You don't want to look foolish by pushing forward, right?
Right. And there's that fear of rejection. So if she starts to ask questions or say, gosh, that really hurt my feelings when you did that, or what did you mean by that, rather than letting things add up, right?
Yes, absolutely. Another thing I want to hear your opinion on is women pulling back because either the guy got too needy, is appearing too desperate, or in some other way has let his masculine presence lapse. And now she's not feeling safe and secure. She's not feeling protected. She's not feeling like this guy can give her feminine energy the freedom it needs to thrive.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I do. That's a big one. The problem is a lot of times women don't necessarily realize that's what's going on all the time. They just feel like, I just don't feel safe. I don't know if I can trust him. And it's not necessarily that she thinks you're going to cheat on her or anything like that. It's that exactly what you said. He's showing up in the feminine energy and deferring responsibility onto you. What do you think? What do you think I should do about this? Now, I mean, obviously in conversations around, serious topics, asking those kinds of questions are great. But if he's doing that a lot, she's not going to feel safe because she's not going to feel like he's showing up as a leader in the relationship. And so this will have women step into that masculine energy, and that creates resentment, sometimes unknowingly, sometimes knowingly. So, I mean, that's a huge one. And, I'll coach women that are in relationships that are feeling that way. I break it down with them and I support them on how to communicate with their partner so that they can have a more successful connection. He's just trying to make her happy too, right?
Yeah. And you know what? As you were talking, I'm reminded of something that's very true in this life. If you show me a man who's getting nagged to death by an otherwise good-hearted woman, I'll show you a guy who's not manning up in that household. And what's going on is the woman's feeling like she has to take on that masculine responsibility, which was his part in the relationship to free her up to be feminine. So she feels like now she's having to grasp at straws for the opportunity to even be feminine, even for that very man himself, because she has to take on the masculine role because he simply won't do it. He's shirking it. And what's worse and what's more tragic, kind of the linchpin to everything you just said, Cyndi, is it also makes her lose attraction for him. And if she's lost attraction for him, but yet she's in a relationship with him, or God forbid, even married to him, that's going to cause her to feel guilty on top of all else. It's like, well, I don't know why. I just don't feel it for my own husband anymore. And I can't tell him that. It would kill him. It would crush him. But I can't go on like this either. So there's this turmoil. There's this guilt. There's this whole cocktail of horrible feelings that happened because the guy shirked his masculine responsibility. And I bet I'm going to get bad reviews. I'm going to get emails and go, oh, come on, you're being too simplistic. All I have to say, gentlemen, is if this is going on in your relationship, check yourself in the way I described and see if it resonates. And also, gentlemen, if you go into a relationship helping a woman feel safe and comfortable, owning that authenticity, throwing things on the table when they need to be called out, and not fearing loss, you're going to see a lot more feminine women respond a lot more powerfully to you in the best way possible.
Amen to that. I love that. You just shared. It's so true. And you know what came up for me too? And this is really serious, but this is a recipe for deeper disaster because everybody's looking for connection, and couples don't always know how to navigate this. She's feeling, resentful, alone, like I don't feel attracted to him anymore. What's going on? It's a recipe for, and I've seen it sadly, but for somebody to stray from the marriage, to start an affair because that feels good and connected.
Not a tasty recipe, is it?
It's horrible.
It's disgusting, as my daughter would say.
It is disgusting.
It's disgusting.
And not to mention, if that happens, you leave the relationship, you get together with the other person, which I've also seen happen. You've actually haven't healed anything within your marriage, and you've created the same relationship with that person. And then you end up frustrated again. Yeah,
the habits haven't changed, just the scenery.
Right.
Same relationship, different person.
Exactly. So, people really wonder, oh gosh, we lose connection. And granted, people change over time and over the years. However, I believe that it's two people's responsibility to connect and be really interested in what the other person's up to. Because, maybe you change passions, maybe she changed careers. And, this is a big one for women. If she doesn't feel heard or valued for what she's sharing, or he's shutting down just watching the football game and doesn't care, that in and of itself creates death and actually loses the intimacy. So the woman will get into busy energy and start doing everything, the masculine, in order to avoid feeling that empty feeling of rejection at the end of the day.
So well said. And it comes down to this, it seems. Where there's connection, there's no real danger of people holding back. Where there's holding back, it's probably because there is no connection. All told. Yeah, wonderful. Cyndi, your brand is Create Your Own Luck and Love, which is a wonderful brand if you ask me. And yes. I want you guys to head over to Cyndi's website, for which I'm going to create a special URL, and that's www.mountaintopodcast.com/Olin, O-L-I-N. 4 simple letters, but a lot of wealth when you get to that website. What are they going to find when they get there, Cyndi?
Yeah, they'll find my free gifts around love mastery. So this is a peek into women's minds, what they're thinking, and what they really want to know about you. So that's a really great thing for you guys to check out, as well as I have an ebook that I wrote called How to Take Time for Your Love Life. So it's about really creating intimacy within relationships. It's a great book. I also wrote another book. If you're really serious about love, this works. A lot of women have tried this and it works. It's How to Meet Your Soulmate in 30 Days or Less. Be happy to support you.
Excellent. And that's all for you at Cyndi's website, which you can go to by visiting www.mountaintoppodcast.com/Olin, Olin. Cyndi, thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a fascinating conversation, and I'm sure men loved hearing from a woman exactly the reasons why women tend to pull away, because this is something I think a lot of guys suffer with in silence, and intimacy and connection and authenticity and vulnerability. Sometimes we as guys struggle, not necessarily with the need to enact those things in our life, but with how to do it, because it doesn't seem like it's necessarily in our blueprint as men sometimes, although it is absolutely in our DNA as human beings. And I think you've done a wonderful job of pointing that out. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so much fun, and I hope your listeners got a lot of value over our conversation.
Oh, I trust they did. And guys, you should definitely go over to Cyndi's website and check out her books, even the ones that are written for women, even the articles written for women. You've already got an insight into how she thinks. It's good stuff that oftentimes, like what we do around here at X and Y Communications, is more human than gender specific. So definitely good stuff. And guys, if you have not visited www.mountaintoppodcast.com yet, go there and sign up for a free 25-minute call with me personally, where we can discuss what's going on in your love life, in your career, or even get you on the track of enjoying your life as a whole better, getting you on more adventures. It's all there for you at www.mountaintoppodcast.com. There's free reports. You can also get transcripts of this show and the YouTube version. It's becoming a veritable podcast wonderland over there. So be sure to go ahead and check out www.mountaintoppodcast.com. Get on my free daily newsletter where I'll give you actionable ways to get better with women and have a more fulfilling life in general as a man. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X and Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X and Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X and Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.